Hey there, and welcome to BingeBot, where we recap all the latest and greatest TV shows to help keep you in the loop. Today we're looking at Sugar Season 1, a detective story with a twist set in the glitzy city of Los Angeles. As always, if you guys want to support our channel, you can do so via YouTube memberships, Patreon, or Buy Me a Coffee, and unlock some cool perks along the way. Alright, let's get started with Episode 1, Olivia. In Tokyo, Japan, a renowned private detective named John Sugar, known for his expertise in finding missing persons, arrives at an apartment to question a Japanese man named Hideo about a missing boy's location. Sugar was hired by the boy's father, Masaki Hashimoto, a Tokyo crime boss, to locate the boy, Yuma. And after a confrontation in which Hideo wounds him, Sugar discovers that Yuma is hidden behind a secret door and he returns him, along with his captors, to Mr. Hashimoto and his associates, successfully collecting his payment. Later that evening, Sugar receives a message from the famous filmmaker Jonathan Siegel requesting his services. Soon after, he visits his friend and business partner Ruby at her Los Angeles residence, and there, Sugar suddenly experiences intense physical pain, briefly collapsing before quickly recovering. As he discusses his recent meeting with Jonathan Siegel and Siegel's attorney, Thomas Kinsey, about Siegel's missing granddaughter, Olivia, Ruby cautions him against taking the case, but Sugar is still determined.
Well, that's his problem. It's not mine and it's not yours.
I can't do that. It's this girl. She reminds me of Jen.
Sugar is then granted access to Olivia's car and condo by Gary Bascombe, the property manager, and he begins searching for clues. He's interrupted by Olivia's half-brother, David Siegel, and David's bodyguard, Kenny, who offers suspicious explanation for their presence. Sugar dismisses them and continues his investigation, finding a recent photo of Olivia with her stepmother, Melanie Matthews. Setting off in his Corvette, he locates Melanie in an LA dive bar where she's singing and drinking. After joining her for a few drinks and sharing a conversation with a homeless man named Carl, he escorts her home. Melanie drunkenly makes a pass at him, but despite his attraction, Sugar gently refuses and puts her to bed, realizing that he won't learn much from her in her current state. That night, Sugar breaks into Olivia's car and opens up the trunk, discovering a dead body sealed in a body bag. But unfazed, he scans the man's fingerprints and snaps a photo before closing the trunk, treating it as just another routine task. Later, an exhausted Sugar returns to his luxurious hotel suite to continue his work, and while examining Olivia's belongings, he finds a hidden collection of photos of her mother, Rachel Kay. Suddenly, he experiences a vivid hallucination where his wounds reopen, bleeding onto the evidence and the floor. Moments later, he finds himself dazed in the shower with his injuries bandaged and no blood in sight. Back in his room, Sugar injects himself in the neck with a substance, a habit that he insists upon, before falling asleep with thoughts of Olivia. Episode 2, These People, These Places. The following day, Sugar meets with Bernie Siegel, a struggling film producer and Olivia's father, who dismisses Sugar's urgency regarding Olivia's disappearance. Sugar then shows Bernie a provocative photo of Rachel Kay, Olivia's mother, only to learn that Bernie, despite being married to Rachel at the time, was not the photographer.
You were married to Rachel Kay then, weren't you? Did you take that photograph?
No, I did not.
Having become angered, Bernie insists that he would have given his life for Rachel before storming off. Frustrated by the family's lack of cooperation, Sugar turns to Olivia's friends, who reveal that they haven't seen her since she got sober a year ago. Meanwhile, at his studio, Bernie discusses a scandal involving David and sexual accusations from 8 women. During lunch, Sugar shares with Ruby that Jonathan Siegel believes that Bernie prefers to think of Olivia as a lost cause so he can focus on his filmmaking and his reckless son David, whom Siegel blames on his despised ex, Margaret Sorensen. Sugar later discovers through Olivia's GPS that she often visited Carmen Vasquez's house, including the night that Carmen was raped and murdered by Clifford Carter, a man whose body Sugar had previously found in Olivia's car trunk. Sometime later, Melanie invites Sugar to an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting where she reflects on her 23 years of sobriety before recent struggles. Afterwards, they discuss why Olivia's car was at Melanie's house every night before she vanished, but Melanie dismisses Sugar's concern, and when he accuses her of hiding something, she irritably asks him to leave.
Maybe you're hiding something. I know you think you're helping her, but you're doing her more harm than good.
Okay, get out of my house.
So let me make this clear. I will find Olivia.
Sugar then discreetly places a tracking device on her car and instructs his associate, Charlie, to get the surveillance van ready. That evening, Sugar tracks down Carl, the homeless man that he befriended, at a motel, only to find him dead from an overdose. He attacks the drug dealer for his involvement before taking off with Carl's dog, Wiley. Returning to Olivia's car to dispose of Clifford's body, he finds the trunk has been cleared out, except for a single blonde hair. Meanwhile, Bernie warns David and his bodyguard, Kenny, to gather information on Sugar as quickly as possible. In his suite, Sugar continues his investigation while Wiley rests on his bed, and determined, he pledges to find Olivia, especially because she reminds him of his sister, Jen. Elsewhere, Carmen's sister, Teresa Vasquez, and her 2 young children come home to find a group of menacing thugs waiting for them. Byron Stallings, the group's leader, questions Teresa about his friend Clifford's connection to her late sister. And after implicating Melanie Matthews, the thugs ominously warn that they'll be paying her a visit next. Episode 3, Shibuya Crossing. While Wiley sleeps on the bed, Sugar wakes unrested from a nightmare, having dozed off in a nearby chair. Meanwhile, Melanie receives a call from a distressed Carmen, urging her to come over. But when Melanie arrives at Carmen's apartment, she finds Byron Stallings and his crew waiting instead. Sugar's surveillance partner, Charlie, alerts him to the situation, and Sugar quickly heads over to check on Melanie. Stallings threatens to harm Teresa unless Melanie provides more information, and as Sugar tries to break into the building, he suffers another physical attack. He eventually reaches the apartment, posing as Teresa's parole officer to confuse the group, though Stallings quickly sees through the act, and just then, Charlie creates a distraction outside, allowing Sugar to sneak Melanie, Teresa, and her children out of the apartment. Meanwhile, Kenny meets with Everett Roberts, a national security agent, to dig up some information on Sugar, learning that Sugar was the top of his class at Vassar College and completed a special elite training program afterward. Stopped along a beach on the California coast, Melanie confides in Sugar that Olivia had been helping her at a women's shelter when she met Carmen, and the two became close friends.
She loved Carmen. They got really close.
During this time, Olivia, she wasn't using, she was
clean.
On the night of Carmen's murder, Olivia had reached out to Melanie for help. When Olivia arrived at Carmen's apartment and found Clifford there with a body bag, she managed to grab a gun from the counter and shoot him before he could react. Melanie had urged her to call the police, but Olivia refused, determined to avoid any scandal that might shame her family, and that was the last time Melanie saw her. Hearing this, Sugar promises Melanie that he'll find Olivia. In the evening, Sugar attends a gathering of the Cosmopolitan Polyglot Society, a secret international group of spies hosted at Ruby's home. He talks with a fellow member, Henry, reminiscing about his time observing people at Tokyo Shibuya Crossing. Later, in a private conversation with Ruby, Sugar denies becoming too personally invested in Olivia's case, but Ruby reminds him not to lose sight of who he is. Meanwhile, David informs Bernie of his plan to travel with Kenny to Arizona to visit Sugar's mother, Helen. As the guests depart, Ruby contacts Dr. Vickers, informing him that Sugar has learned about Stallings and will soon uncover the rest. Vickers insists that it's time to notify the others and that Miller needs to be brought up to speed. Ruby then erases Byron Stallings' information from a database. Episode 4, Starry Eyed. During a visit to Dr. Vickers' office, Sugar passes his health check, but he deflects questions about his drug use and mental state. When his hands start trembling again, Vickers expresses concern, but Sugar insists that he's fine. Meanwhile, in Arizona, David and Kenny meet Sugar's supposed mother, Helen. While back at home, Bernie flips through old photo albums of Rachel and Olivia. Sugar calls Ruby about Byron Stallings, but she tries to steer him off the trail. And while visiting Sugar, Melanie recalls spotting Olivia in a cafe, intensely speaking with another woman on the day that she was supposed to meet her. Previously, Olivia had posted a video expressing her unease about feeling watched. Investigating around town, Sugar and Melanie encounter a woman named Danny at a record store, who claims Olivia is friends with someone named Taylor. At Taylor's apartment, they learn that during her audition for Bernie Siegel's film, David tried to blackmail her with a sex tape if she refused to sleep with him again. Taylor reported him to the police and after, when confronted by Bernie's lawyer, refused to sign an NDA. Taylor confided in Olivia, who revealed David had a pattern of such behavior. With a growing suspicion that Olivia's knowledge of David's misdeeds might be linked to her disappearance, Sugar meets Jonathan Siegel at a film screening in a glamorous Hollywood theater. During a photo op, Bernie and Jonathan Siegel argue, and Sugar is introduced to Margaret, who approaches him for a chat. Afterwards, Sugar warns Bernie that his son's scandals and his own efforts to cover them up are on the verge of going public. While meeting Glenn, the projectionist, Sugar reviews the venue's CCTV footage and notices a suspicious argument between Bernie and Melanie. Just as Siegel begins his post-screening speech, David's scandals break in the media, causing a commotion. As Siegel steps off the stage, he suffers a heart attack and collapses. Meanwhile, Stallings calls David, warning him to keep his name out of any legal conversations, and instructs his gang to pay Melanie a visit, ordering them to guard his special project behind a locked door while he's away in Tijuana, Mexico. Later, Sugar observes that in the photographs of Rachel Kay, she's wearing the same dress that Lorraine Everly, Jonathan Siegel's deceased wife, wore 30 years earlier in the film shown that evening. Puzzled by the implications of the night's discoveries, he slowly begins to piece together the threads of the mystery. Episode 5: Boy in the Corner. While reviewing footage, David breaks down, telling his mother that he'll never work in the industry again while she tries to comfort him. Meanwhile, at Jonathan Siegel's house, Sugar searches for David, but instead finds a room dedicated to Siegel's late wife, Lorraine, the same room as in Rachel Kay's photos, with Lorraine's iconic dress hanging nearby. In another room, Siegel lies unconscious, connected to multiple health monitors. Bernie then confronts Sugar, demanding that he drop Olivia's case, but Sugar refuses. He meets with Margaret as well, who insists that the media accusations against David are untrue, though Sugar remains skeptical. Eventually, David admits to his mother that he never knew how to interact with women and even resorted to threatening them if they wouldn't sleep with him. He reluctantly confesses that Stallings had arranged for trafficked women to sleep with him, though he claims he didn't think that they were mistreated. When Olivia encouraged Taylor to go public rather than settle with David, David had asked Stallings to intimidate Olivia, though he hadn't anticipated what would follow. Upset, he admits he felt Olivia never liked him, so he decided not to like her in return.
I always felt like she didn't like me. And so I decided not to like her.
In a remote location outside of the city, Ruby meets with Miller, another member of their secret polyglot group, to discuss Sugar. During their conversation, Miller instructs her to do whatever it takes to keep Sugar from uncovering their secret. Meanwhile, Melanie returns home to find Carlo, one of Stallings' men, waiting for her with a gun. Taking advantage of a distraction, she strikes him across the face with a candle holder and locks herself in the bathroom. As he begins drilling through the door, she stabs his hand as he reaches through. Moments later, Sugar storms in, attacking Carlo in a trance-like state. After severely injuring him, Sugar ultimately decides to let Carlo go. He then takes Melanie to his hotel, offering her the bedroom, though she opts for the couch. In Mexico, Stallings and his crew stop a bus, forcing several young women into their vans before heading back across the border. That same evening, David drinks wine with Margaret, reminiscing about struggling to get a scene right as a child actor. Shortly after, he heads into the bathroom and attempts to take his own life. He is soon discovered by Margaret and Bernie, who frantically call for an ambulance as David clings to life. Later that night, Sugar lies down on the floor beside the couch where Melanie is sleeping. He reveals that he has a secret, but that he can't tell her what it is. Episode 6: Go Home. At the hospital, Bernie and Margaret receive devastating news. Although David is still alive, he is brain dead. Meanwhile, ignoring Ruby's warnings, Sugar arrives at Stallings' residence, where he's met by two aggressive Dobermans. He manages to calm them instantly, almost as if by magic. Inside, Sugar tries to unlock a bolted door, but hearing a woman's cry, he hurries towards the sound and realizes too late that it was a trap. Now surrounded, he faces Stallings and his crewman, Manny. Stallings sneers that it's too late to negotiate and mentions that even Charlie, waiting outside in the car, is in danger. However, when Manny fires, Sugar deflects the shot and takes them down one by one. Roberta, Stallings' girlfriend, stabs Sugar and he shoots her in self-defense. In a final confrontation with Stallings, Sugar realizes that someone tipped him off and asks where Olivia is before killing him. Moving through the once bolted door, Sugar finds a basement full of caged dogs. Soon after, Moss, another one of Stallings' men, arrives to find everyone dead and Sugar waiting with a gun. Taking Moss's phone, Sugar lets him leave and then he tries calling Charlie, but he finds the line disconnected. At the Siegel mansion, Bernie informs Jonathan of David's condition. Tearfully, Bernie and Margaret agree to let David go, and Jonathan comforts his son in his grief. Barely alive, Sugar makes it to Melanie's motel, where she tries to call an ambulance, but he insists that she call his friend Henry instead. Henry arrives, stitches up Sugar, and instructs Melanie to make sure that he stays in bed. However, as she sleeps, Sugar awakens, drives to Ruby's, and confronts her about tipping off Stallings. Ruby claims that she only told him to back off and not to attack, but he suddenly realizes that Stallings took Olivia for someone that Ruby is protecting rather than for the Siegels. Desperately, Ruby begs him to stop searching for Olivia, saying that's for the greater good and for the mission. Heartbroken by her betrayal, Sugar leaves, vowing to continue his search regardless of who tries to stop him. Back at the motel, Sugar quietly passes by a sleeping Melanie and goes to the bathroom, where he injects himself in the neck, murmuring that tonight he can rest and go home. In the mirror, his skin and eyes begin to glow blue as his human form fades, allowing him, for a moment, to be his true self.
Go home. Go home.
Episode 7, The Friends You Keep. In her office, Ruby types on a strange machine while Miller watches, silent and intense, with the machine's responses being decipherable only to them. Afterward, Ruby asks Miller not to harm Sugar. At a small, private funeral for David Siegel, attended only by his closest family, Bernie and Jonathan have a heart-to-heart on the memorial grounds, after which a deeply affected Bernie begins to doubt whether Olivia is truly safe. Back at the hotel, Melanie tells Sugar that he was speaking an unknown language in his sleep and demands to know what's going on. Sugar starts to talk about his sister, Jen, but Miller and his crew burst in. Sugar and Melanie sneak up into an adjacent room, but Miller quickly finds them, pinning Sugar against the wall. Melanie distracts Miller by hitting him with the towel bar, and the two escape, with Sugar wondering what could have shifted to make Miller act so ruthlessly. Later, parked above the city, Sugar explains the private organization that he works for, a collective where each member has a separate day job but shares a unified mission. Melanie accuses him of being a foreign spy, but he insists that their role is only to observe.
You're a spy. I mean, that's what this is, right? You're a foreign spy?
We're just here to observe.
Holy shit.
The two then arrive at Moss's home, only to find his lifeless body on the floor. That afternoon, Sugar returns to his hotel suite, cleans up, and grabs his gun, telling Melanie that he won't return without Olivia. Following Miller, he arrives at a clandestine group meeting, and during the meeting, Ruby declares that their mission is over, saying they're all being recalled, but Sugar refuses to leave without finding Olivia. Henry explains that a powerful group of humans discovered them and has been blackmailing them with threats of exposing their true alien nature if they don't back off from the Siegel case. He hands Sugar an address and, while cautioning him that staying in the human world for too long makes them more human, he wishes him luck, and he hopes that Sugar finds Olivia, but without Jen, he will always be lost. With unwavering resolve, Sugar breaks into the home of the address that he was given. However, he is caught off guard by a security guard who stuns and cuffs him, threatening to make Sugar reveal his sources. Sugar gives him a chance to back down, but the guard refuses, and the two struggle until Sugar has him pinned down. With a gun to the man's head, which they are both holding, he reveals that he is Ryan Pavich, the son of State Senator Pavich, before pulling the trigger and taking his own life. Continuing his search in the basement, Sugar finds an elaborate torture chamber, fearing the worst for Olivia. Spotting a locked compartment, he quickly breaks it open and feels immense relief as he finds Olivia alive inside. Episode 8, Farewell. Back at the hotel, Sugar reunites Olivia and Melanie, who fall into each other's arms, sobbing with relief. Meanwhile, on his way to the evacuation point, Miller is stopped by a corrupt police officer who shoots him dead. Later that morning, after a tense conversation with Ruby, Sugar finds Henry writing in his journal, with Henry admitting that he's torn about leaving Earth. Later, on a bustling Hollywood street, Sugar listens to a recording that he took from Ryan Pavich's home. In it, Pavich boasts about torturing people while a woman's screams echo in the background, and disgusted by it, Sugar turns it off before the end. He then heads to Jonathan Siegel's home, smiling sadly as he sees one of his friends leaving Earth in the sky above. Once inside, Siegel shows his appreciation and how impressed he is by offering Sugar double his salary to head his security team, but Sugar declines. Through a window, he sees Olivia sitting peacefully with Bernie on the grass, and he hands Siegel the photos of Rachel Kay. Siegel confesses to having had an affair with his daughter-in-law and Bernie's first wife, Rachel, being drawn to her resemblance to his late wife, Lorraine. Hearing this confession, Sugar suggests that Olivia might be his daughter, and the two agree that all that matters is that Olivia is loved.
Are you asking me if Olivia is my daughter?
No, sir, it's not my business. She's loved. That's all that matters.
Grace and sensitivity to the end.
Saying his goodbyes, Sugar leaves and takes Wiley to Melanie's house, and there, the two discuss Jen's kidnapping, which drove him to become a private investigator. Sugar decides to also reveal his secret, asking Melanie to hold his hands, and in silence, he shows her his blue eyes and transfers some of his experience to her. Having finally shared his secret with her, she smiles as he drives away. On his way to pick up Henry, Ruby calls to warn Sugar that they are being hunted, and realizing that he has missed something, Sugar resumes listening to Pavich's recording and suddenly stops, turning his vehicle back towards Olivia. Back at Siegel's home, Olivia tells him that she had heard another man writing during her captivity, though she never saw his face. Replaying the recording in his car, Sugar realizes Pavich's words overlap eerily with phrases that Henry once said to him.
That's everything.
It's so strange.
Don't you agree?
Nothing. You just be careful.
Hurrying to Ruby's empty home, Sugar hears the telephone ring. It's Henry, revealing that he was there to observe humans in every detail and learn their behavior. He declares that he's staying behind on Earth, insisting that this world is also where Sugar belongs. After telling Sugar that he's left him rose petals in the empty house, Henry hangs up. And following the petals, Sugar finds Jen's dress in a closet, realizing that Henry was her abductor. At the evacuation point, Ruby confesses that they permitted Henry's actions for the mission's sake, but they were unaware that he had taken Jen. Sugar vows to stay on Earth, feeling responsible for bringing Henry here. His hands steady, he expresses that he will miss Ruby and the others, but he feels a kinship with the people of this world. As Ruby is transported back home, Sugar sets off to continue his mission, this time to track down Henry and find his sister. And that's it for Sugar Season 1. I gotta admit, I did not see that twist coming. I'm definitely excited to see where the story goes next. Hey, thanks again for watching our recap and for sticking around until the end. If you guys like this video, consider sharing with a friend or maybe just dropping us a like. And if you want more content like this, subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell so you won't miss a new video. Thanks again to all of our viewers. We'll be back soon with another recap, but until then, BingeBot is logging off.